this is Roger Green, host of the podcast still known for now as SurfingNASH Tsunami. Today we are offering 4 conversations from episode 35, in which Jörn Schattenberg, Louise, Campbell, and I joined together for the first time in a month to look back at the first half of 2023 and forward to the second half in terms of episodes and lessons. Plus, we have a vault episode from last November addressing the psychology of diet decision-making. This conversation focuses largely on the episodes we have planned for the next couple of months. It starts with Louise Campbell discussing episodes she plans to lead in August while Jörn Schattenberg and then I go off on holiday. And we then proceed to other items we expect to cover later in the year. If you want to learn what you have to look forward to from this podcast, listen on. Reviewing this episode and the various conversations reminded me of how much information has become available already this year and what it portends in terms of future episodes and an ever-increasing explosion of new information about liver disease and drugs and tests, etc. It's quite a lot to digest. Very excited to consider, particularly going forward. So sit back, listen, learn, and when you're done, join the dialogue on our LinkedIn discussion group. Why don't we slide into what we're going to do next? Because we want to get Jörn off to bed. And frankly, I think we've got some cool episodes coming. So Louise, over the next 3 weeks, while Jörn is away for 2 and then I'm away for the 3rd, Louise isn't going to be driving the entire boat, but she's got a couple of episodes that she's pulling together now that are going to be an important part of the agenda. And so do us a favor and do our listeners a favor and whet their appetites for what they might be looking forward to.
Jörn Schattenberg.
Well, after that intro, Roger, I can't leave. I mean, I got to stick around and hear what Louise is up to, right?
That was part of the purpose, Jörn. Yeah, you got it. Okay, go ahead, Louise.
Louise Campbell.
These are all subject to confirmation. One of them is to follow the team in Brisbane who've been doing the Locate NASH study, because I would like to have a conversation with them about their work and the evidence that they're producing, because it sounds very exciting, because they've done cost analysis in different areas that aren't traditionally done. But the whole program is centered around locating NASH through FibroScan and the patient portfolio in real life. So this is a study that's been running for the last couple of years. I'm just going to whet people's appetite. I'm going to let the team tell you exactly what the study is, because that would steal their thunder, but also the hard work that everybody's done there. So that was one.
So would I be stealing the appetite whetting if I said that what you said about this that got my attention in 15 words or less is it's really a holistic look at liver disease and all the ways that it impacts the society, much more broadly than what we talk about on this podcast normally?
Yes, my understanding is that's correct. It goes into workforce and other areas. I do know they're due for publication, so I'm not going to reveal, because I know very little. So it will be what they're prepared to reveal if I can get them to confirm. So these episodes may not come off.
Oh, and if they can't, then trust us, this episode will come off at some point, because if they can't confirm now because they've not published yet and they're embargoed, then when they're no longer embargoed, it's something I'm definitely going to want us to come back and talk about. So that's number 1. Go ahead, do number 2.
And number 2 relates to the recent nomenclature discussion that we've been having and the fact that this may not be the end of that. I'm hoping to have a conversation with Dr. Yakoya Ayorinde, who wrote a very good piece on the historical narrative of fatty liver, dating well back, almost a couple of 100 years from today. So this may not be the newest disease, but it is certainly got a long way to go, and it's undergone a lot of different changes for what it's been called and how it's been referred to over that couple of 100 years. So in a couple of 100 years' time, somebody may dust off this episode and say the new name for is X and Y, and we have now gone back. So I'm hoping to have a very interesting conversation about the history and where it's come from to where we are now. That's been previously published. It's a historical narrative from fatty liver in the 19th century to contemporary NAFLD, and it's reconciling the present with the past. And of course, we've taken a leap forward since this was published in 2021. And this is an Australian physician out of Perth, and Australia will not be changing currently with Asia Pacific from NAFLD and MAFLD, or MAFLD and NASH. So it'll be an interesting conversation, but I'm so excited about the history, and it's not as new as we think it is.
Louise, I will bet this much. I will bet that when we come back to this this space in 20 years, assuming we're all around to do that, that we will learn that there are more names and more subdivisions and maybe even a different general focus. I talk about cancer, which started out as cancer as in Nixon thought he could find one cure for cancer in 1969 in the U.S. And then we understood that cancers in different organs are different things, and there are different kinds of cancers in each organ. And then eventually we found some commonalities. I expect we'll undergo the same process here as NITs come into the picture. And as we get an AI and we get a richer understanding of the disease, in fact, that's exactly what I would anticipate will happen. So we may still have this broad umbrella that is the same umbrella that we just changed to. But boy, there are going to be a lot more things in it with relative valences.
Yes, and so hopefully this will go out and these will be the 2 episodes I'm covering. If they're not, they'll have been cut and I'll have said 2 different episodes and nobody will be any the wiser.
No, they'll be the wiser because we're posting this week. But it wouldn't be the first time that we ever didn't do exactly what we said we were going to do. Pardon the double negative. Yeah, so those are excitements for August. We still want to come back and do one episode talking about basic science and maybe one about fully devoted to AI and NITs in terms of what we learned out of EASL and how those pieces go together. In fact, the AI NIT issue is a lock for some time this month. The other one we'll see about. In September, we're going to cover Paris-NASH. I may be there in person. It's not clear yet. And the newly renamed SLD Summit, formerly known as the NAFL Summit, which we will cover in Prague, hopefully in person. Go ahead, Jörn.
Well, this was one of the implementation strategies that I realized come out of the societies. They will work to contribute their share on changing and implementing that name change. So I think the SLD Summit now, as it's called, will be one big step. And I think ASLD is going to have something happening before that too. So both societies stand together here and step up to move the name change forward.
When you say ASLD might have something happening, are you comfortable and in a position to provide any more details on what you mean by that?
Well, they plan a lot of educational activities, as say whatever they can do through their web pages, through their webinars, their offerings. So the general educational activities are being planned through ASLD. That should be announced soon.
Okay, but nothing on the scale of a major meeting rebrand like SLD Summit.
Not a meeting. No, not
okay.
that.
I wasn't either. That was I asked the question not knowing the answer, or knowing that if there was an answer, I didn't know it. Try it that way. Yeah, so we'll be looking at those. At some point, several people, Jörn and I haven't mentioned this to you yet, and have asked for a specific meeting where we pull together as many of the key players in Nail NIT as possible. We talked about that a lot when it got started, and folks have said, well, gee, what's going on with that? There were a couple of presentations at EASL that were important presentations that were clearly Nail NIT presentations, but to look more broadly at kind of an update on that and where it's going is something we'll be looking to do sometime this fall. I'm starting to work on an episode that we've badly needed forever and I haven't known how to put together, which is U.S. payers and what they will and won't pay for and how they're going to evaluate this issue when it comes to market, because I think that's going to be pivotally important. So I anticipate that sometime in September, October. And frankly, one of the reasons I'm putting all this out here is we get a lot of listeners. As you'll hear in the business report, we just had our second straight 10,000 download month, which is the first time we've ever done that. And we'd like you guys, you folks, when I say guys, I come from Brooklyn or Long Island, which is close enough. We'd like you folks, you good, gentle people, to let us know what you'd like us to be talking about that we're not. What are areas and people you'd like to see us bring on that either we've not brought on in a while or have not brought on at all, and topics you'd like to see up for discussion that we haven't talked about. The other one that comes to mind, and this is just as we're talking here, is we haven't touched epidemiology in a big way in a while. We should probably do that as well sometime in the fall. Anything else, folks?
No, but just on your epidemiology, there's been some fascinating figures out of Asia and West Asia Pacific recently in the Lancet and the Diabetes about the size of metabolic disease in 10 to 19-year-olds and then 10 to 24-year-olds. That don't quote me on at the moment. I've just been skipping through them, but the rise of type 1 but type 2 diabetes in those populations is massive. And I think the one figure that I could remember is the Chinese population in that age range dropped by 145 million, and yet the Indian population in that age range rose by about 145 million, so they basically balanced each other out. The figures are astronomical. But the concern of the rise of metabolic associated diseases and NCDs, which is what they're focused on, epidemiology would be a great one, particularly in that region.
Yeah, Mazen was citing a number last week about the Lancet study on diabetes in 2050. They said there's expected 1.5 billion people will be alive and living with diabetes in the year 2050, which is mind-boggling, really.
The figures are frightening.
So the only thing I might want to add at this stage is that, with all these people living with type 2 diabetes in increasing numbers, we're coming to the end of this podcast, but they're reaching the end of their liver capacity. So a lot of these people are developing cirrhosis and clinical significant portal hypertension. And this is something we want to avoid with the therapies that are currently being developed. But to me, as a clinician, it's so exciting to see that some of the companies are also moving into that advanced field, clinical significant portal hypertension, decreasing the rate of decompensation. You might, if you have an effective drug, see effects even in a shorter timeline. You don't need 5-year outcome trials to show efficacy of the drug. So while it might be a tough drop to swallow or whatever you might say, tough target, a difficult study to be done because those are sick patients. If you have an effective drug, you can be successful at a rate that we're not seeing in the F2, F3 treatment trials today.
That makes tremendous sense. I mean, Stephen, if you recall, was it last week that he made the comment that he's confident we'll have some demonstration in the near future that FGF21s can get approved in controlled cirrhosis? That's not what you're talking about. You're talking about the step after that, right? As people start to decompensate.
So even more, yeah. So there are early drug programs that are being set up for that. Clinical significant portal hypertension being defined as portal pressure over 10 millimeter mercury, meaning they have varices, they have high risk of ascites, and this is beyond what we're currently looking at in most of the trials. But there are some compounds being developed for that arena of clinical significant portal hypertension.
Well, okay, so then let's put a mark on the wall that says we need to do a cirrhosis episode, and we can really look at both of those at once, earlier and later, and ask what's happening, because you're right. I mean, in the liver galaxy, those are the patients in the hepatology practice that need the most help the fastest, and treating them is different. So with that, why don't we wrap up? And I'm going to ask each of you to take 30 seconds and just make up an answer to this one, and I will as well. One episode you'd like to see us do sometime before the end of the year that we've not mentioned yet. Oh, and saying covering ASLD is a cheat.
Well, given such short notice, I'd like to debate, does Santa Claus have fatty liver disease and which type? Because you've just... literally, you flew through me with exactly what I'd like to cover, but I hadn't really thought about what we hadn't covered that I'd like to see. But it would be an interesting debate.
I love that episode. Of course, there's a theological problem.
Well, what symptoms can we discern that he's got?
Yeah, we've got to bring the non-Christians to that party, so we might have to pick a few religious figures. I mean, I'm thinking you could do historiography on Buddha as well, and that might be kind of interesting.
Well, if you go back to my comment last week, is we do have to look at the psychological aspects of what we're doing with these medications, in the fact that curves are part of nature. Curves are seen as a sign of fertility. By changing somebody's body habitus, positively or negatively, actually has serious repercussions. So whilst we might be laughing about Saint Nick or what he's called in different languages and areas, actually there is a serious undertone about the change. We're all trying to pigeonhole people and lose weight and that, but it's where we lose the weight and how we measure it. So there is a serious side to St. Nicholas and Buddha and the curvy sculptures that we see that people atone.
Louise, one of the things I love about that answer is that Jörn would only come up with something that off the beaten path when he's really tired. So,
well, I can't beat Santa Claus. I mean, that's just. I was thinking serious business here. So I thought we should really re-invite more colleagues to join us in the discussion, because I think in the momentum we're at this point in broadening the outreach and moving steatotic liver disease to a broader audience. I think it'd be great to have a primary care physician's voice that we haven't spoken with, or that might not have as much contact with the disease itself, but of course a lot of insight in managing everyday's patients. Get somebody of those colleagues on this podcast here, even an endocrinologist that's not as heavily focused on fatty liver disease as Ken Kuzi might be, for example. So I think sitting down together, we can come up with a few suggestions and invite new surfers.
I think that's eminently doable. Listen, we've got GPs and endocrinologists who are not as prominent as Ken as regulars on every episode of Rising Tide for exactly that reason, because that's where the target is. It might be interesting to get some of those folks, one or two of them, to get together with a couple of the hepatology KOLs. I think that's a great idea.
I think Joel's right. On a more serious note, now I've had a little bit more time to think about it than just being thrown at that 30-second question, but also, if we have people in the audience from different countries who would like to participate, I'd like to see us open it up a little bit. Singapore is a very big audience for us, obviously Macedonia. So you did a beautiful episode about Ukraine and how things are managed, and we always talk from our own very Western perspective.
Well, since the two leaders of ELPA, one is from Macedonia and the other's from Slovenia, which are ironically the first two countries where we ever scored number one on top medical podcasts, I'm sure we could come on and we could do that, and that would work out well. And I think that's a great idea. I mean, you're right. We take a very U.S. Western Europe view. So I think that might be a really interesting thing to take a look at from a different perspective. You guys came up with 3 ideas, which means I don't have to come up with any. I can just wish everybody farewell. And we will be back next week, same time slot. Jörn will not be with us, but Louise will, and we'll come up with something. This might be Louise's first episode if she can pull it together fast enough. Or if not, I've got a couple other things in mind, and we'll be back in a week. Until then, stay safe, surf on.
And now, back to Roger.
We hope you've enjoyed this recording. If you have any questions or comments about the content of this conversation or the entire episode, please put them in the review section of the page from which you downloaded the conversation, or send an email to questions@surfingnash.com. If you have suggestions for episodes you'd like to see us prepare in the fall, that would be the right way to send those to us as well. We'll be back next week, ideally with one of the conversation topics Louise Campbell discussed in conversation 4 of this episode. Until then, stay safe, surf on. We'll see you on the podcast. Bye-bye now.